Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Janda, and I work with Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I'm an energy project manager there. We're joined tonight by Margot Gia. She's an energy planner from Windham County Regional Planning Commission, and Sarah Ledwin-Peary from Green Mountain Power, Craig Ferreira from Green Mountain Power, and Kristen Carlson from Green Mountain Power. Thank you for joining us. Before I hand it over to Craig and Sarah, I wanted to just let you know why we're hosting this tonight. Regional planning commissions are in the absence of county government. We fulfill a lot of planning roles, including energy planning. And that is one of the reasons that we're hosting this webinar tonight. Because storage is something that we all need to learn more about, and may become a big part of our energy projects moving forward. So Craig, if you could go to the next slide, please. So regional planning commissions have assisted municipalities with the creation of their enhanced energy plans. We also provide land use planning for municipalities, a whole range of services. So with that said, I'll hand it over to you, Craig, to get started with the storage information for tonight.
Thanks, and I'm actually going to let Sarah jump in here first.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I believe that you may be muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Ann and Margot, for having us here tonight. And thank you so much to everyone who showed up. I'm so excited to see people from across the state putting their names and towns in the chat. Great to have you all here. So Green Mountain Power, we're here for you. Our goal is to provide clean power close to where it's used. So today our power supply is 100% carbon free and 68% renewable. And our goal is to be 100% renewable by 2030. We've been recognized for our battery storage programs as a national leader in energy transformation by the Smart Electric Power Alliance Leaderboard in 2021 for our innovative programs that make it simple for customers to transition from fossil fuels. And throughout our programs, our goal is to partner with customers to expand energy storage in homes and businesses. And all of this work is guided by our proactive climate plan, which includes work on resiliency zones and other programs to improve reliability. Next slide. Storage is great because it's a tool that lets us achieve multiple goals at once. So storage cuts carbon, it cuts costs, and it boosts resiliency. The goal of resiliency is to stay powered up during storms, which, as we know from science, are becoming more frequent and more severe due to climate change. Storage also lets our power supply be more affordable. It's cost-effective, seamless backup power that lowers peak energy use, which also lowers the cost for all of our customers. It improves carbon reduction because batteries can use the clean energy supply and avoids having dirty backup power options for homeowners. And it's also a very flexible resource that provides a new tool to strengthen grid and support renewable development. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So hi, everybody. My name is Craig Ferreira. I work in the innovation development space at Green Mountain Power. Which means I get to do all the fun stuff that we work on to bring new and exciting programs to our customers. So tonight I'll focus on two of our basically our flagship battery programs. The first is our Bring Your Own Device program. The second is our Tesla Powerwall program, also known as ESS. You'll hear as a commonly used phrase when we're talking about that program. So our Bring Your Own Device program is essentially a program where customers can install their own energy storage system, and then they can enroll it into our management platform, and we will give them an incentive for doing so. So down the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see a list of available energy storage systems that we're compatible with. So these are some of the major players in the energy storage space. We've talked to countless number of energy storage solutions, and these are kind of the leading systems that we've integrated with to allow our customers kind of the optionality for what they want to work with. So when a customer works with an installer of their choosing, they get a system installed and they want to enroll into the GMP program. It's basically a self-service online enrollment form that they go through online. So they basically fill out basic information, name, address, that sort of thing. And then we'll ask them for their information about their energy storage system. Once that happens, it'll come into we'll see it, and then we'll make sure that one, that it's online, and two, we'll check out the different specs and make sure that the options that the customer chose during enrollment actually will work for the program, and then we will send them a check based on how much they've enrolled in the program. And so the incentive that we're sending is based on the amount of energy that the customer is enrolling. And so you'll see here for up at the top here, the 3-hour resource. What that means is that we are going to discharge the battery for 3 hours in order to capture our peak. And I'll get into what peak capture or peak shaving means in a few slides here. But essentially, we're discharging the battery for 3 hours. So just as a simple example, I'll use some round numbers. So let's say a customer puts in a 15 kilowatt hour battery. We're going to discharge that system at the same rate for 3 hours. So 15 divided by 3, which is the hours, will get you your 5 kilowatts worth of enrollment. That 5 kilowatts dictates what the incentive is. So it's $850 per kilowatt enrolled. And then, like I said, that will be the check that we send to the customer for their enrollment.
Hey, Craig, I just want to say there's been some questions coming in. So I would encourage everyone who's tuning in to post your questions. So I want to make sure we get to them, and we're happy to just sort of jump into questions. And I think this one ties into what you're talking about. So I just want to say hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Carlson with Green Mountain Power. We are so excited to be here talking about storage. It is one of the most critical ways we can address climate change, boost people's resiliency. And the real power of these programs is that not only does it provide the benefit for the customer who's enrolling because they get their resiliency, it helps to lower costs for everybody. It's a pretty unique program across the country. I know, Craig, you get calls from folks in the region and across the country who want to model programs on this program. We have thousands of customers who are enrolled and who are really enjoying it. And I want to get to Brian's question here. Brian asks, per the point about batteries providing power during an outage, I assume this requires a transfer switch similar to a generator, ?
Yes, that's exactly right. So in some cases, the transfer switch is actually built into the energy storage system. In other cases, a transfer switch, a standalone transfer switch, would be wired in as part of the system. That is absolutely necessary to make this all work. Thanks, Kristen, for jumping in there. So I know these numbers can be a little bit confusing, but good news is GMP is always there to help explain these things. Us and all the installers that are participating in the program can explain this very well to customers so that it actually makes sense. All this to say is that the incentive is $850 per kilowatt enrolled. If a customer were to enroll a 4-hour resource, which is basically the same exact math I just explained, just dividing by 4 instead, it's an added $100 per kilowatt. So it's $950 per kilowatt enrolled. We do have a lot of distributed solar, rooftop solar, residential solar on our grid. And so in the areas where we have a high penetration, that are particularly high penetration, the grid is becoming constrained by the amount of generation that happens during, particularly during sunny summer days. And so for systems that are sited in one of those locations that are able to, we call it soak up the solar, basically just, charging with the extra solar energy on the grid, we'll throw in another $100 per kilowatt enrolled. So it's an added kicker for customers in those locations.
All right, Craig, a couple more questions pouring in.
Perfect.
So this one is 3 hours or 4 hours does not seem like much to run a furnace in an outage. Can you get several batteries to be able to make it overnight? So this is a really important question in terms of what the batteries can do. And I don't know if we have any folks who live in southern Vermont, but if they they did, they know that we had a very tough ice storm this past weekend where really a lot of our crews said that I think the trees looked like chandeliers because they were coated with like an inch of ice. And Craig, today, I know you were pulling some of the data in terms of what the batteries were able to offer and provide in terms of backup. And I know there was one customer who had their batteries go through the whole outage. So about 4 different outages they experienced and was able to provide backup for a very long period of time. So it's not the 3 to 4 hours. Craig, can you give a little more context on the duration?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good clarifying question. So what I'm talking about here is GMP's use of these batteries for peak shaving purposes, so our grid purposes. So the 3 and 4 hour resource is strictly based on how much we will use it at any given time. But battery systems in general are going to last much longer than that, assuming the customers, kind of being aware of what they're using, right? So, it's we always get the question is how long will the battery last in an outage? And it's an impossible question to answer because it really truly depends on every single customer in every single outage. So it entirely depends on what is being used during the outage. So, if you're using basic things like you keep your fridge running, you are keeping some lights on, your internet going, it's going to last you many, many hours. If you are running multiple heat pumps and you're using your oven, you've got your heat, your hot tub pumping, then the battery is going to drain a lot faster. So it truly depends on what you're using in the house. But generally speaking, you can get a good long time out of for backup power out of your energy storage system. And yes, you can, in many cases, you can stack multiple batteries on. So each of these manufacturers you see on the right, they do it a little bit differently. So, Tesla has the Powerwall and you can stack more than one side to side or front to back. Some of these other ones have cabinets that you put multiple battery cells in and you can, stack multiple cabinets next to each other. So they are kind of stackable is what, kind of the terminology. So you can get a larger system and prolong your outage.
And most of our outages are around 2 hours or less. Sometimes there is a big event like we had this past weekend with the ice storm. But again, the batteries can last for a very long period of time, especially if you focus on critical load. I have Powerwall batteries at my home and they can last quite a while if you just sort of limit what you want to try to keep on to the essentials. Neil is asking, is this program available to out-of-state owners with second homes in Vermont? And Neil, I can let you know that as long as you are a GMP customer, the program is available to you. Okay, that's all our questions for now, Craig. Keep going.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Just a couple more points on the program itself. So we are able to enroll 5 megawatts annually, which is quite a bit of energy storage. So far on the Bring Your Own Device program, we are not reaching that limit. So plenty of space to enroll systems. And then the last point I'll make is that in exchange for the incentive for enrolling the battery system into the program, it is a 10-year commitment, which basically means that we're giving you an incentive upfront to help defray the cost of your energy storage system. And you're agreeing to let us use it for 10 years. Almost every single battery, I don't actually think every single one has a warranty of at least 10 years, if not longer. So the enrollment for 10 years matches or aligns with what the manufacturer's warranty is for these systems.
All right, a couple more.
Sure.
Diane wants to know, are cities the most constrained areas in Vermont?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would say that it probably doesn't always correlate to whether it's city or rural. It really kind of depends on where the rooftop or residential solar is installed. What I can point you to is that we've got a solar map on our website that highlights which areas of our grid are constrained versus the ones that are less constrained.
Let's see, Vince here. How are you dispatching power, the power walls or the batteries? And are there exceptions to a dispatch contract, for example, a weather event? So 100% Vince. So the main reason why folks are getting these batteries in their homes is because they want resiliency. They want that added reliability at their home. So I know Craig and I are in constant communication, as are a few other folks. Whenever there's a weather event, we call off any of the dispatches. Not every storm in Vermont causes outages. If you think light and fluffy snow, that won't won't cause outages, so it's not in every storm, but every time we anticipate a weather event that could cause an outage, we call off the dispatch. And we can't guarantee it because, of course, I'm sure you've seen cars can hit poles in a blue sky day that we can't predict. But overall, we've had a lot of success in terms of calling off any event when there is a weather predicted that could cause outages. Let's see here. One more question here. Craig, does a homeowner need a 200 amp service for this?
No, so it can be done on a 100 amp service. It really kind of depends. It more depends on what is actually in the home, and sometimes the battery system itself, but no, a 200 amp service is not required.
All right. Diane wants to know, are the 3 hours per day per week? And what about the incentive? Is that per month? I think you're talking about in terms of the backup. On average, we say it's about 6 to 8 hours a day for the backup. Again, we've had it go 12, 14 hours. And then if you add solar, you can kind of go indefinitely in terms of recharging during the day. And then about the incentive, that is an upfront incentive, right, Craig, to defray the cost. And I believe it's the largest upfront incentive that's offered in the country still.
Yeah, it's a one-time upfront incentive. So basically a one-time payment that you can use, however you really it's a check to you. So you can use it to just pay down the cost of the battery or however you want to use it, but it is a one-time upfront payment. And just to make sure we cover your other question in case I have a different interpretation, the times that we use it for 3 or 4 hours, we as GMP using it for our grid purposes, we say 5 to 10 times per month. Really, our average is around 5 times per month. I think for the past 3 years or so, it's been right around five times per month. So we don't use it very often. Some months we will use it more than others because the peak is a little bit harder to predict in those months. Other months we'll use it less because it's much easier to predict. But on average, it's about we will use the batteries for our grid purposes about 5 times per month.
Good catch. That is what Diane was getting at.
Okay,
Vince has a quick question. Do you use storage resources for GMP use, or do you also sell ancillary and power services? So the one thing I think we got to make clear about these programs is that 100% of the benefit, when we're able to lower the cost on those peak energy days, 100% of that benefit goes right back to all of our customers. And I think last year, all of our storage programs, both residential and utility scale, wasn't it saved about $3 million for customers, I think,
Yeah,
and
right.
similar the year before. So this isn't, everything that we're doing here is 100% for the benefit of customers in terms of how we're leveraging the batteries. And then is the 3 million saved due to the GMP battery backup? Henry is asking. Do you want to explain how we're able to leverage all the storage systems to lower peak costs, Craig?
Yeah, actually, if we can hold off there, I do have a slide that kind of,
Okay.
it's titled Peak Shaving 101 or something like that. So
Okay.
in a couple of
Go
slides,
ahead.
we'll get to it.
It's nice to see you, Henry. We're going to get to your question. And then Sarah, quickly, this is sort of gets to the work you're doing with resiliency zones. And I forget if we have a slide on this or not, but Michael is asking, is there any thought to implementing microgrids based on distributed generation storage? And so Michael, this is happening in Vermont. Panton has solar storage and is the first of its kind microgrid in the country. And Sarah is working with several other communities right now. And this is really exciting. Tell us a little bit more, Sarah. Unmute this time though.
Yeah, absolutely. As Kristen mentioned, we already have an active microgrid in Panton, Vermont. And we are working with a couple of communities to pilot doing additional microgrids that will be based on a pairing of distributed generation and storage. And the first community that we'll be working with on that one is Rochester, Vermont.
All right, let's try to keep getting through the slides, although Virginia has one that's right on topic. So if I could just pop this one in, Craig, quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
So what does call off the dispatch mean? And I guess I said that. So what that means is, Virginia, when we are typically, as Craig said, leveraging the battery several times a month to hit peak energy costs. And he's going to address that in a slide about what that means and how we're able to save money per Henry's question. And so what we're able to do is if we can predict that you're in an area that could get a storm tracking, we have a team of folks who do it, who track multiple forecasts days before any event. So for example, when the storm hit southern Vermont, sort of the Sunderland district area, we were able to know that storm was going to be there and deploy resources there in advance. So if we know there is a storm that could cause outages that is forecasted to happen, we will make sure that we are not drawing any energy from the batteries at that time. So that's what we mean when we use sort of that utility jargon, call off the dispatch.
Yeah, I think somebody may have asked how we're doing that. And it's essentially we have a management platform that allows us to send signals to all of the systems as say, discharge for 3 hours, for example. And then they just kind of follow suit. And so when we say call off, we're quite literally just not doing that. So instead of actually taking that action, if we've got a storm coming, then we won't. We'll make sure that instead that they're sitting there charging up, ready to go for customers' backup purposes.
And then Tim wants to know what happens when the batteries start to deteriorate. So again, they have a minimum 10-year life cycle, but that's very conservative. So they actually last a lot longer. So if you're part of our Tesla Powerwall program, after the 10 years, you can keep the batteries, you don't have to pay anymore, and you can still have them to use. They also have a recycling program where the batteries can be taken back at the end of their life cycle and be reused. So good question. Thanks, Tim.
All right, I'll jump into our Powerwall program. So just the high level details in this program is anybody who participates gets 2 Powerwalls and it backs up the whole house. So it's basically just wired into your main electrical panel, and every single load in your house is on the battery. So most of the time when customers are in an outage situation, they actually don't know until they get a GMP notification from the app. Because the Powerwalls are so fast at flipping over to battery power that lights don't flicker, your clocks don't reset, that sort of thing. So it's a nice seamless backup situation. Have your whole house backed up. Customers signing up have no upfront costs. It's $55 a month for 10 years. So essentially, GMP owns these batteries, and customers are leasing them from us. So we maintain ownership and make sure we take care of the batteries. So if anything goes wrong, customers can call GMP, and we can work with Tesla to get the situation sorted out. Customers also have the option to pay, instead of $55 per month, they could pay $55 upfront as kind of a prepayment for the 10-year lease, and doing that saves about $1,100 over the 10 years, the 10-year term. Each system is 27 kilowatt hours or 10 kilowatts, which is really more than enough for most things in most houses. So think of the big draws are going to be things like a well pump, which most of us are probably familiar with. A lot of the bigger motors that need a lot of power can be covered by this system without an issue. This program is also 5 megawatts per year. We do fully subscribe this program regularly. We actually we're just about maxed out already for this year. I think this morning I was told that we were at 495 customers signed up, and to get to the 5 megawatts, we need 500 customers. So we're just about there. So if you're interested in joining the program, I highly recommend you sign up on our website sooner rather than later and get on that wait list. So as people drop out for one reason or another, you might move up into getting a spot. In this case, just to kind of contrast how we're managing the system. So we have a separate platform. So Tesla has their own platform that's actually automatically managing these batteries for us. And so what that looks like is they're actually looking at real-time data, and then they are discharging these batteries accordingly. So if they see a peak coming based on the data that they're looking at, they will discharge the batteries. The nice thing about them doing it is that when in real time a threat of a peak kind of dissipates, then they can stop discharging, and then more energy stays in the batteries. All right, I'm going to stop there. Casey, are there any questions related?
There's a lot of questions, but what's really
Okay.
kind of magical, Craig, is I'm noticing that you're just organically answering some of them. So
All right.
I feel like you did address, Diane was asking, is that $55 a month program fill? You hit that. I know you're going to get to some of the peak shaving and the explanation of the how it works in terms of saving customers money. But Tim has a really important question. Where can batteries be placed? For example, can it be in an unheated garage or a basement? I know mine is in the basement, and that's just fine. But Craig, what do you generally tell folks?
Yeah, I mean, the ideal situation is that it's inside, indoors, you know, in a somewhat conditioned space, but it's not necessary. So we do have systems that are installed outside. Actually, I think I have seen a picture of one that's in a chicken coop. So yeah, I mean, the restrictions are really about temperature. And so when it gets super, super cold, the performance of the batteries does degrade a little bit for, you know, during that period. It's not a permanent damage type of thing. It's just a you know, temporary you know, degradation of performance of the system. But generally speaking, they can be, you know, garages, basements. You know, that's typically where we'll see them, is really as close to the electrical panel as possible. And most are you're going to find are going to be in garages and basements. So yeah, it's they can be installed pretty much anywhere, but ideally you'd have it indoors.
Okay, and then it looks like, let's see, Richard's asking what capacity remaining percent qualifies for the $100 per kilowatt adder?
I'm not sure I totally follow the question, but for the
Yeah.
so on the bring your own device program, the $100 per kilowatt kicker or adder is up to the full enrollment amount. So if a customer enrolls a 10 kilowatt system, then they'll, you know, and they're in a constrained area, then they can get up to $1,000 extra. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm not entirely sure.
Yep, and at the end, we're going to have our contact information. So like if there's anything we ran out of time for, we're more than happy to hop on another Zoom call with you or your community or your town energy committee if there's something we're missing. Let's see, Dave Schramm is asking, does the $5,500 include installation? Does DMP do the installation? What are the dimensions of the battery? So the $5,500 does include what we would call most normal installations are included in that cost. GMP does not do the installations. We work with folks and installers who are qualified to do the work. And then in terms of the dimensions of the battery, I believe we have it on our website, or I can post a link. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the exact dimensions, but it's they're about 6 inches deep. I know that to be true. So the picture you're looking at now is about a foot deep. And I believe they're around 3 by 5, maybe a little bit smaller than that each. So, you know, it's, you know, they're kind of like a large screen TV.
Yep. Let's see. Vince, how is Tesla addressing the conflict mineral issue, specifically cobalt? And is GMP considering, I don't know how to say this, life, lowercase e, PO4 batteries? By the way, this is an awesome program. Thanks, Vince. So do you want to hit, I know we're constantly looking to deploy new batteries. I know we just filed a pilot that we're going to start Enphase batteries for about 100 customers, I think. Do you know anything about these Life PO4 batteries?
Yeah, I think it's lithium ferrous phosphate is the chemistry. So yeah, okay. So I recently saw that Elon Musk of Tesla is going to be making a switch on their chemistry. So they're taking a step in the right direction. And yes, we have looked at all of the other manufacturers, and yeah, I mean, we're absolutely looking at all of the systems that are available to us, and we are working with Enphase, which will soon roll out a similar program to this. And I am not exactly sure on the exact chemistry they have, but I do think it's slightly different here. But yeah, we're definitely in tune with the different chemistries and making sure that we're paying attention as much as we can to these types of things.
Okay, all right. I think we can keep going because I think there are some peak shaving questions. So I think folks are interested in that.
Yeah, perfect. That's the next slide. So that's great. So what you're looking at here is 2 different charts. So the bottom chart is what we are actually doing with the battery. So that's our, we call it an aggregation or a group of batteries. So that's what the batteries do during our peak event. So you'll see that it kind of goes up like almost like a tooth. Goes straight across, which is indicative of, you know, a 3-ish hour time period, and then it goes down because our peak event is over. And so what that correlates to is up at the top, that orange line is the actual GMP load. Can you see my mouse moving at all? Or is that visible on the screen?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, great. Okay, so so this area here, so this is GMP, our load at any given time, the whole load for the entire grid. And when we say peak shaving, what we're trying to do is take this peak, so quite literally a mountain peak, and drop it down as much as possible. And so what this does, this flatten, this flat line here, basically follows this peak here, cuts it off, and so this whole area up here is what we've shaved, right? So that's when we say peak shaving, we've shaved off this entire peak. And so this area represents a lot of our operating costs. And so the lower we can, or the more we can chop that down, the more costs we save, which we can then pass on to all of our customers in the form of lowered rates. And so this happens once a month. So we have a Vermont peak once a month. And then we also have one per year for the entire New England region. That's very similar. The shape of this will be very similar. But that one per year drives a lot of our operating costs. So again, I mentioned earlier, we do this about 5 to 10 times per month based on the month, but the average is around 5. And then peak shaving is once you're looking at these pictures, I hope that it becomes a little more self-explanatory that we quite literally looking at a mountain peak, and with our batteries, we cut that peak right off, and so we just shave it right off, and that's what we're left with.
And what
And
it
again,
means
the space.
is, like, yeah, instead of having to get, during these high energy use days, these peak days when everyone is using power, that is when on the New England grid, that is when power is the most expensive, and that is when power is typically the dirtiest. And so when we're able to not have to go out and supply power during that time, we can take the batteries, leverage that power, which we know is clean because it's relying on our grid, which is 100% carbon free, and our power in Vermont, and 68% renewable, and not have to go out into the market and get this expensive, dirty power. And when it comes to power costs, those benefits 100% go to customers. So if we're able to save, $60,000, that means all of our customers save $60,000. Again, last year we were able to save $3 million, which again, we have a few thousand batteries and a couple of the utility scale size projects that Sarah referenced. And with climate change and the need for increased resiliency, we are going to see more storage as a way to really drive down costs. It's a pretty flexible resource that can be really powerful. And Craig, we had a question that was earlier, I wanted to make sure we got to, from Henry, where he said, has GMP been able to defer distribution upgrades because of storage? And I think what it's really been able to do is to lower our power supply costs. I know there's been some situations where it's meant we haven't needed to do like a typical line project, a pole and line project. It's helped there. But I think that's typically how we view those savings. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that one.
Yeah, sure. So there hasn't been a major project where we've deployed storage instead of the poles and wires infrastructure. It is something that we are looking at constantly. The fact is that storage is still a relatively expensive thing to deploy and as a alternative. But we're getting close, and actually what we're doing now, and some of the work Sarah's doing on resiliency zones is just that. So we're actually looking at a project that is going to accomplish that, where we deploy a bunch of storage and defer our T&D upgrades in a specific location. So it is something that we are constantly looking at, and definitely is going to become a fairly regular occurrence, I believe.
Okay, and then Henry has another question. What have you learned about small scale distribution versus utility level? I appreciate such as easy to model, but very tough to model accurately. And so we actually are doing both in terms of large scale solar storage projects. I think we have about 4 or 5 solar JV projects. We're looking at adding storage, and then the projects that Sarah's doing. So I think we see it as all the above. Okay, I don't know if Craig or Sarah has anything else to add on that one.
No, I think
Yeah, I would just add that our goal is really to create targeted interventions that meet the needs of a specific community, and that will look different if you live close to a town center than it would if you live, way out in the boonies, like where I grew up. So I think that we're just trying to recognize that there's a diversity in the places that we're serving, and really just try to use the technology that's available to us to create a really targeted solution that will actually, be just about meeting the exact needs of a particular spot.
Diane says, how many microgrid projects does GMP envision in Vermont?
So we're doing this as a pilot. So the goal really in the first round is to just work with a couple of communities with a really hands-on approach and test out a couple of different scenarios and see how well they work. So I would say by 2024, I envision 5 or 6, but I think the possibilities are endless. And I also think that as new technologies become available, we're just going to be more and more connected. There are going to be distributed resources everywhere. The grid is really going to fundamentally change to the point that I think everywhere will be kind of a microgrid. You'll have all sorts of smart devices talking to each other.
It's a pretty powerful image to think about. For some homeowners or businesses, it will work to have storage on their premise. For some folks, it won't work. And that's why that community scale storage that really meets the need of the community is going to be really important. So we have both. Let's see. Tim asked, does the system have an automatic shut off in case of emergency?
The short answer is yes, without fully understanding the need of the question here. They all have been tested for fire safety and that sort of thing, but they do have shut off and safety mechanisms within each system to deal with that kind of thing. So I would point you towards any of the manufacturer safety documents for a better answer to that question.
And then Virginia wants to know what happens if one stops being a GMP customer within the 10-year contract?
Yeah, so we see this quite often where customers will sell their house after they put in a battery. So we have a pretty simple process in place where the agreement can just be transferred to the buyer of the house. So it's just a quick document to be signed by both the seller and the buyer. And then the buyer of the home just kind of assumes the contract. I think we are pretty much near 100% on the transfer of the contract. There may have been one time where the buyer of the home did not want the batteries and they were removed, but almost every single time we've seen the buyer actually does want to assume that agreement from the seller of the home and continue with the battery program.
All right, I think you can keep going. I think we're caught up on questions, but keep them coming.
All right. Yeah, great. So Casey mentioned the storms getting worse and more severe, and this is just a pretty eye-opening statistic of a slide. I think these are all in the past 10 years, I believe. 5 of our biggest storms we've ever had, biggest being the most impactful storms on our grid. They'll just keep coming as we see climate change keep happening. These storms will keep intensifying, and we'll start having to be creative in how we're dealing with our grid and how we can make it more resilient. So a lot of our storage efforts are around dealing with this direct impact right here. All right, so that's kind of the fun charts I can show you. This is from a November 2018 storm. We had, I think it was a major ice storm back then too. It was a multi-day event. I think it was closer to a week or so that we had outages on and off for customers. So this chart is showing the number of customers that had Powerwalls kick on during an outage during that storm. And so you can see some of the numbers here. We had almost 3,000 hours of backup provided by the Powerwalls for customers that were participating. You can see there's on the left side, the highest customer outage was 89 hours. They rode through with their Powerwall the entire time. And again, a lot of these will have solar also. So as long as the sun is shining again, the Powerwalls can be recharged by the solar. So, you may use most of the Powerwall one day and then the sun comes out and you're still generating power and powering your home with the solar and battery the next day. So keeping you up and running for quite an extended period. And then the average here was almost 13 and a half hours per customer with the Powerwalls. So to the question of how long do they last, there's a decent answer right there. Is they can last around 13 and a half hours on average for a serious outage like that. We've talked about this a little bit. This is a little bit older stats on when we first were using the Powerwalls to do some peak reduction and save on our costs and generate savings for our customers. These are just headlines that came out because it was early on in our rollout of the program. So, the first year we saved $500,000. Similarly, using the Bower walls takes, back then it was equivalent of taking 1,100 homes, or excuse me, 7,500 homes off grid. So, these are just some of the older stats, and these numbers are just larger now. So Kristen mentioned we have saved 3 million with our battery programs last year. That 10 megawatts that you're seeing there is really closer to 17 megawatts now. So we're almost double that at this point. So these numbers are still climbing as the programs continue to be rolled out to customers and people keep signing up.
Marlena has a quick question, Craig. What happens after 10 years? Does GMP continue to utilize the batteries for peak reduction?
Yeah, great question. So after 10 years, after year 10, the customer has the option. They can keep the battery in place. They can stop making their lease payment and keep the battery in place, and everything else in the agreement stays the same. So yes, GMP would use it for up to additional 5 years for peak shaving. Really, the only thing that changes is that the customer no longer has to pay the monthly lease price. So still getting the backup energy, GMP still getting the use and the value out of the batteries. And then we take it out when it actually reaches the end of its useful life, which theoretically, the way they're being used should be much longer than even 15 years at this point.
All right, another question, which I totally get, and we do have an answer for, but Alisa is asking, if this is saving money, why is the program almost full? So I can hit that. We are fully regulated, as are all utilities in Vermont. And so when this program was approved by regulators, it was approved with a set number of either megawatts or customers who could participate in the program. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff. And, we want to be bold, but I think as a regulated entity, there can also be appropriate guardrails on the size and the scale and the scope. But we have just filed for an extension of these programs, and it's under regulatory review now and will be for the next several months. But we are very hopeful to be able to expand these programs because, again, it's pretty groundbreaking. Most utilities in the country are not doing things like this. So we're hopeful to expand it. I know, Craig, you're a lot of times in the thick of those regulatory filings. Anything else on that you want to give context to folks?
No, I think just to add on to your point, it's not a common thing to see programs like this around the country. We do spend a good chunk of time talking to other utilities and other entities, asking about the program and how we're doing what we're doing and why. And then, trying to model programs or create similar programs to this because it makes so much sense. So I would just say that we've actually set a pretty big precedent here, being able to get this program through a regulatory process and make it a permanent, we call it a tariff program. And so it sets a really good precedent for other utilities around the country to be able to offer programs like this.
And our goal really is, some kind of storage device in everyone's home or in everyone's community, just because of what a flexible resource it is and how it can really help. So Vince was asking, kind of follow up on this, Craig, was the 5 megawatt limit GMPs or the PUCs? And I guess I would say it was part of the PUC approval process. That's where it's landed in terms of what we're able to do. But again, we're expanding it, and we're really hopeful that this will continue to be an option for customers moving forward.
Here's just another example of an individual customer that experienced an outage. So 4 days in this case. You can read the quote there. He basically just ran his house as if he was on grid power. The power walls lasted him quite some time. So this blue line represents the state of energy in the battery. So right around the full mark up here on the top left, and it kind of drains over time. And then back here is basically when the grid came back on. You can see it charging back up and ready for the next outage. So just a good example of what batteries can do for an individual customer.
I'll always remember after we first deployed the batteries, and it was our first storm, and we thought the batteries would work as we thought, but we were still obviously interested to see them perform in the real world. And I took a phone call from a mother who had their pumped breast milk in their freezer. And for anyone who's been a parent, a grandparent, experience what it's like to have breast milk in your life. she was so elated and in tears that her Powerwall batteries kept her breast milk frozen through the storm. And at the time I was a new mother, and that really resonated with me. So they have a lot of value they can offer folks. Let's see, Diane has a question. Can you do these kinds of innovative projects because you're a relatively small company in a small state? You're also the only utility nationwide that's a B Corp, right? How did this come about? So I can hit the first one, and then I don't know, Craig or Sarah, if you want to hit the second one, but we are the only certified B Corp utility. And that means that we amended our bylaws to kind of focus on doing good for the planet, for our customers, and for our community. And it's really the ethic of everyone at GMP. It's how we feel. You know, we are on the front in terms of battling climate change, while you still have some utilities who are against climate change. I don't know if that's possible, but aren't really embracing the reality of climate change and the innovation that's needed to meet the challenge of the time. So we just got recertified as a B Corp. It's a process that happens every few years, and it just shows our commitment to our community. And there's a lot of other great B Corp businesses in Vermont. I should add, there's a very strong network of B Corp businesses. And so we often leverage each other for ideas. And then her first question, Craig, I don't know if you saw this, is sort of, can you do these because we're small? I do think there is some power in being small, right?
Yeah, I definitely think there's definitely value in us being small and being able to move quickly on things. One of the biggest things that drives this is that we've been very fortunate to have leaders that are very forward thinking and want to push the envelope to innovate and make changes on the way we operate the grid. I mean, we've been, the grid has essentially been the same for 100 years. And so it's, thinking in an innovative way and how we can push the envelope towards making a change in the way we do things, using distributed resources like batteries and managing other devices like EV chargers and water heaters and that sort of stuff. So we've been very fortunate to have leadership that has pushed us this direction. The other big factor for us is that we have a regulatory structure in place that allows us to do innovative pilots. It's called Innovative Pilots and Services, which essentially lets us kind of cut through some of the red tape that's required to do a lot of utility programs. And so we still have a lot of guidelines on how we operate these pilots and these programs. But we can do it in a way that's a lot quicker than a traditional route for putting together like a tariff rate or a tariff program. It's pretty unique in the country. There may be one or two others that have a similar structure in place that allows them to move quickly like this. But as far as being able to do these types of things, it's because of those reasons that we've been able to be so successful making these things happen.
Here, let's see, we've got one more question. Someone wants to know, this sounds like a win-win. Are there any drawbacks to getting battery or battery Powerwall?
So in my opinion, no. The only drawback is really the monthly cost if it's something you need to consider. But no, I mean, it's a win-win, right? So we all experienced the big storm this past weekend, which is the slides you're looking at now. And we've had again this past weekend down in the southern part of the state, we had at least 40 customers with Powerwalls that all stayed on throughout the storm. And so having that peace of mind, having the backup is a huge win for the customer, for the utility, and all of our customers. The ability to use these batteries for our grid purposes is another huge win. We refer to batteries as kind of the Swiss Army knife of distributed resources because they can do so many things. So, they provide backup power, they provide grid services, they can generate new revenue through market participation. They do a whole slew of things that other resources just can't do. And so, yeah, I mean, really, this is a win-win. There's not many downsides to having batteries put in. I'll throw in another plug for batteries, kind of replacing a fossil fuel generator, right? So your alternative backup source is going to be a generator that you have to maintain every year, or you should maintain every year, that's burning dirty fuel. In this case, you're not doing anything. It's sitting in your basement, your garage, and it's just coming on when the power goes out, and it's just coming on without you having to think about it, without you having to do anything about it. There's no annual maintenance, there's no service, there's nothing needed for the battery. So yeah, I mean, I would always plug for batteries being a solid movement.
All right, let's see here. Scott is asking, do you plan to offer programs similar to the Tesla Powerwall program with other battery system vendors? The answer is yes. We did just file a pilot program to work with a battery called Enphase. That program will be very, very similar to the Powerwall program. I believe, Craig, it's open to 100 customers. And then you saw with our Bring Your Own Device program, which is a great partnership with many renewable energy business leaders and companies in Vermont. There is at least half a dozen or so battery vendors that we partner with. And I think we have that list on our website, but always looking for more battery vendors. And there's just going to be more and more that become available. And I think, Craig, that's one of the main things you like to do is sort of surf around and see who the next company is, and we want to make sure it's safe and reliable and can be deployed in customers' homes. And that's why I think we're excited with Enphase, and that's starting soon, right?
Yeah, so we're expecting to roll that one out probably in about a month here. So yeah, you're right. It's open to 100 customers. It's essentially the same program. The pricing is a little bit different, but the customer offer is essentially, the structure of the customer offer is essentially the same. And yeah, so we're constantly looking at different battery manufacturers. I've talked to just about everyone I think is probably out there at this point. And so yeah, we're constantly evaluating them and seeing if there's an opportunity for us. And new ones keep popping up, and we see things like long duration storage companies that are popping up with different chemistries that will basically perform in a different way. And so we're looking at them all. We are definitely open to working with anyone that makes sense for our customers.
Do you want to talk about this slide? And then I have a couple more questions that have come in on the chat.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to kind of highlight this past weekend. So just two examples, two customers, similar to the slide I showed with the previous customer added, but I was able to pull these today, so I figured it was worth showing. So you'll see that the red here is the red line is the grid power. And so you'll see this duration where the red's kind of flatlined here, and down over here is the outage duration. So this one was represented around 11 hours. The battery is full, dropped down, probably around 50%. Grid came back, and you see the red starting to charging up again, and the battery fills back up. Same thing over here. This one actually had a really brief outage here. Battery charger back up, and then it just kind of slowly drained. And this one actually almost used all of the power in the battery before the grid came back, and then it charged back up, and that was about 13 hours worth of backup. So yeah, I mean, it's always fun to see these things because we can, we have lots of data around who was out and when they were out, and then we can take that and we can correlate that to who has a battery and see how the battery actually performed and see what they're doing. So, in these specific cases, they did exactly what the customer needed them to do. And again, they didn't run out of energy at all before the grid came back. So, using the battery as a tool to work with us as we restore power to the grid. It really just, it's another win-win because it, allows us, it gives us the extra time that we need to make sure that we're doing things safely to get power back on before people run out of power.
Couple questions about the charging and recharging. So Dave wants to know, how does the Powerwall change things for solar array owners? Would the array first recharge the batteries, and then send to the grid? In the event of an outage, do the batteries, once in use, quote, top off with the solar energy that is being produced? Do the batteries allow for primary powering of our house by the solar array?
Yeah, that is one of the major benefits of having a battery with your solar array. So a solar array now without a battery in a grid outage situation will just shut off, right? So the solar will stop producing when the grid goes down. When you add a battery, you're essentially creating your own mini island. So you're creating your own mini grid where the battery infrastructure allows the solar to keep producing. And so what happens is that the solar will feed the battery will feed the house, the whole thing keeps operating. If everything is satisfied, meaning the house no longer needs power, the battery's topped off, that solar would then shut off until the house is drawing more power or the battery is somewhat depleted. Then the solar will just start generating again. That's in an outage situation. So I think you also are asking about if you are connected to the grid. You could essentially think of the battery at that point as another appliance in the house, right? So let's just say the battery is half full. The solar is going to produce whatever energy it's generating. It's going to feed the house. And then the battery at that point is part of the house. So, it's going to feed the loads. The battery is going to fill up as if it's, a refrigerator, whatever else is using energy. And then anything beyond that, it will then export to the grid. So as long as the house is topped off, the batteries are topped off, any extra generation when the grid is connected still will then go out to the grid.
This is sort of a similar follow-on Richard has. Is the power that's used by GMP replaced after the event for free or at regular rate?
Yeah, great question. So the way it works is that energy going, again, I'll use the example of the Powerwall or battery being another appliance in the house. So behind the meter, so the grid supplying power goes through the meter into the house. At that point, the battery is part of your house. And so the customer would see that as a charge on their bill. The difference here is that when we take energy from the battery back to the grid, it effectively spins that meter backwards. So it's called a net meter. It nets out that energy. And so the customer is credited at the exact same retail rate that they paid for the energy. And so it becomes a wash. So, in this case, it's 27 kilowatt hours into the battery and then 27 kilowatt hours out of the battery. And the customer pays for the 27 kilowatt hours, and then we give them credit for the 27 kilowatt hours. So it's a wash because the energy is traveling in both directions.
Neil wants to know, if I was not so interested in this program, but wanted to build my own solar, can I purchase a Tesla Powerwall battery through GMP at a discount? So to be clear, the reason why we're able to offer it at a rate that's lower than if you were to go on the market and try to buy a Tesla Powerwall battery is that we're delivering some of the upfront benefit of the peak shaving costs that we know we're going to be able to deliver over the decade we're partnering with you on this program. And so you're getting the benefit of that through the upfront cost being less when you get the $55 a month or the $5,500 one-time payment. So Neil, if you were to do it the way you want to do it, there's a ton of options for you to go on the open market and get the battery you want, because again, other customers are paying for that benefit. And that's why the person who gets the participating customer gets the lower upfront battery costs. And then all of our customers get the benefit of the lower peak shaving and all those other benefits that we talk about. Let's see. Quick question. Oh, Margot's just reminding folks, if you could please take a moment to fill out the program survey, that would be awesome. We do have one more question I want to try to get to. Vince wants to know, what advice would you give the Vermont municipal utilities to offer a similar service?
Yeah, so we are definitely in communication with a lot of the smaller communities in the state, working with them to help figure out how to roll out a program that that can look like a number of different things. There are others that are doing similar programs to the Bring Your Own Device program. We are talking to them about how we might be able to help kind of combine programs in some cases where it might help. So yeah, I mean, it's tough to prescribe any one straightforward answer here, other than to say, it takes some creativity to make things work for each of them.
All right. And then is this your final slide, Craig?
Yeah, I don't think there's much more other than I always like to show this one's probably the most Vermont slide I've ever seen in my life. It's just a fun couple photos. And I think we have a line diagram here if anybody's interested in the actual wiring and how that works. I can leave this up for a few minutes here if there's any more questions.
All right, I don't see any more questions right now. So again, I just want to thank everybody for joining. This has probably been the fastest hour of Zoom that I think we've had in a while. This is Craig's contact information. I think we just scratched the surface of questions that folks had. Did get to all of the ones that were posted, and I posted my email as well in the chat. Please reach out anytime about any of our programs or services or any information we can provide to help you or your community. We would love to engage with you. So Anne, I'm happy to turn it back over to you.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Craig, Sarah, and Kristen. That was a really awesome presentation. And please, before you leave, if you would fill out our survey, that would be awesome. That'll help us to plan future events and get more information about you and the information that you're looking for. So I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Yes, thank you again. I think that's a wrap.
Thanks again. Take care.